To those who cannot recognize the QR code, the link is in the chat box.
What? Are you having video?
Oh, yeah. So Aiden can't go. He's not. Wait on.
Please be reminded to keep your camera and microphone off for now until prompted for a group photo session. Thank you.
Ni apa ni tekat register
Ladies and gentlemen, please be reminded to keep your camera and microphone off for now until prompted for a group photo session. The event will start in 5 minutes. Thank you.
This is the
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good morning. Welcome to the Safety, Health and Environment National Authorities Working at Height Forum as part of the Sheena Safety Forum. We would like to thank you for your attendance today and hope that the forum will contribute to further understanding on safety issues concerning work at height activities.
Ada speaker kah? Bukan suara mana? Bukan. Jangan besar sangat sini je. Okay.
No, jam.
Aris mana?
Please find today's agenda as shown in the slide. During this session, we will hear from a number of presenters from Sheena's industry sector, as well as presenters from the industry, namely Masyarakat General Contractor Sdn Berhad, Megamas Sdn Berhad, Best Integrated Engineer Solutions and Supplies Sdn Berhad, and Public Agency Safety Management Association. There will be 2 question and answer sessions before the 5 minutes break and before the closing remarks. Participants are encouraged to ask questions either by using the hand raise function or by typing their questions into the chat box. At the end of this session, we will have Kahoot quiz for participants to join, and we hope to end today's session at around 12 p.m. To bless today's event and seek protection from the COVID-19 pandemic, we would like to invite Yang Mulia Mas Nadi bin Haji Masri for the recital of Surah Al-Fatihah and Dua for the protection from COVID-19.
Astaghfirullahalazim, astaghfirullahalazim, astaghfirullahalazim. الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب إليه إلى حضرة النبي المصطفى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله وأصحابه الكرام. الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم خير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين آمين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. نعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. نعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. نعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. بسم الله الذي لا يضره مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضره مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضره مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله والحمد لله محمد رسول الله لا قوة إلا بالله. بسم الله على ديننا وأنفسنا بسم الله على أهلنا وأموالنا بسم الله على كل شيء أعطانا ربنا بسم الله خير الأسماء بسم الله رب الأرض والسماء بسم الله الذي لا يضره مع اسمه داء بسم الله افتتحنا وبالله ختمنا وعلى الله توكلنا وتحصنا بذي العزة والجبروت واعتصمنا برب الملكوت وتوكلنا على حي الذي لا يموت اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من البرص والجون والجزام ومن سيء الأسقام اللهم اصرف عنا وعن سلطاننا وبلادنا وجميع المسلمين في كل مكان البلاء والوباء والطعن والطاعون وصائر الأمراض وخصوصا وباء COVID-19 وكنا شر الردى بلطفك يا لطيف يا خبير.
Amin, 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 ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you, Yang Mulia Mas Nadi.
Kedengaran nggak tadi? Aku baca.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, we kindly request you to switch on your cameras as we will be taking group photos shortly.
Okay, ready? Smiling. Hold on, yeah. A few more. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. You may switch off your cameras now. Before we start with the presentations, we'd like to remind all participants of the general guidelines during the event. Unless you are presenting, please keep your cameras and microphones off throughout the presentations to reduce the bandwidth used and to minimize noise and background echo. If you have any questions, please use the chat box function, which can be found at the top right-hand corner of your screen. And please state your name and your organization as well. Questions will be addressed during the questions and answers session. Questions that are not addressed due to the time limitations will be answered offline and will be uploaded to the Sheena website at www.sheena.gov.bn after the event. Please be informed that this event is being recorded and will be shared on the Sheena website for public access, along with the presentation slides used today. Should you have any technical difficulties, please inform us in the chat box and our technical team will assist you. To start today's event, may we invite Captain Jamie Rebello, Chief Inspector of Industry, for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this webinar event hosted by the Safety, Health and Environment National Authority, SHENA. This forum is the first of a three-day safety event being hosted by SHENA and aims to spread awareness of safety, health and environment matters within the workplaces in Brunei Darussalam, with a particular focus on work at height safe practices and areas of concern. Today, we will see excellent presentations from and be able to interact with notable speakers from SHENA, Mashore Training and Assessment Center, Megamars Training Center, Best Training Center, PASMA, and International Not-for-Profit Association with a base in Singapore as well. It is my honor and privilege to speak to you today, and I do hope that through this interactive session, you will see value and relevance. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your continued support and your efforts towards ensuring a safer workplace. I see this event as beneficial and supportive of the ongoing outreach programs undertaken by SHENA as we continue to seek to improve HSE standards and practices, as well as raising HSE awareness across all workplaces within the country. Statistics from the International Labour Organization, ILO, through their report during the 2019 World Day for Safety and Health, indicates that each year 2.78 million workers die from occupational accidents, of which around 2.4 million of these fatalities were attributed to being due to the work-related diseases every year, and 0.38 million occupational fatalities workers per year. It is also estimated by ILO that globally 1,000 people are estimated to die every day from occupational accidents, and a further 6,500 from work-related diseases. The question that comes to my mind, should we be concerned, and should we as a community be doing something to improve the HSE standards and awareness within our workplaces? Today, it is widely known that occupational safety and health awareness and adherence to safe practices remains relatively low in the priority of some employers. There is also inadequate monitoring, enforcement and awareness programs concerning the importance of occupational safety and health. The constant and rapid changes in economic structures, technologies and demography have resulted in new occupational safety and health standards that should be discussed and subsequently taken into consideration in policies and procedures for all organizations across the country. SHENA has the mandate to enforce on all matters pertaining to workplace safety, health and environment. The organization remains steadfast in its belief that it can make a difference and ensure Brunei is a safe place to work and live, delivering against the aspirations of the nation under the Wawasan 2035 deliverable of quality of life, with an objective to be an HSE compliant nation by 2035. Over the past 3 years, SHENA has extended its outreach to workplaces across the country, and through its monitoring visits has had the opportunity to engage with various organizations and their workers with the goal of raising and promoting HSE standards in workplace and preventing work-related injuries and in particular fatalities. We must prevent accidents and harm to people, and to be able to do that, we must identify the hazards and strive to manage and control risk and put in place sound processes and good industry work practices that ensure the safety and health of the workforce at all times. SHENA has at a national level declared 4 themes that will be scrutinized over the next few years, these being asset integrity for the oil and gas sector in particular, crane operations and working at height for general industry, education institutions and government buildings. Prior to the onset of the second wave of COVID pandemic in Brunei, SHENA inspectors have routinely undertaken inspections and since 2020 has implemented unannounced monitoring visits to workplaces as well. We have also noted a majority of the work-related fatalities have occurred within the construction industry, including falling from height accidents. And as such, it is most opportune that we are here today to discuss and learn more about relevant work at height safe work practices to support industry in general. As the world faces the new normal caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, we in Brunei too have had to face the hard reality over the past few months, with COVID cases being registered and restrictions being imposed, which has aided to prevent the further spread of the virus. We must adhere to the Ministry of Health directives and increasingly remind ourselves and those around us that by being aware of hygiene measures, physical distancing, and temperature checks alone will not resolve the matter. Being fully vaccinated must be the priority for all of us as we adhere to the directives during the transition phase. This essentially means that as a society, we must work together to promote and protect ourselves and those around us by the establishment of safe practices that ensure positive results and prevent the spread of the virus. On a similar note, our contributions do matter in the face of ensuring better work at height practices and improved occupational safety and health standards within the workplace. Risk exists in most workplaces, especially so in the construction-related industry sectors, where work at height is identified as a high-risk activity. Without suitable controls and safety measures in place, occupational safety and health impacts can be life-threatening if wrong practices are not adhered to in a timely manner. We must prevent accidents and harm to people, and to be able to do that, we must identify the hazards and strive to manage and control risk, and put in place sound processes and good industry practices that will ensure the safety and health of the workforce, including those impacted by the work activity. I'm sure over the next few days, we will have the opportunity to reflect on relevant practices that would be helpful and effective for us to consider. In closing, I would like to reiterate that Sheena seeks the support of all its stakeholders to create a safe and healthy environment to ensure Brunei will always be a safe place to work and live. By attending this event, you show your support, and it is by your understanding and actions going forward that you can truly make a difference. Thank you once again to all of you who have taken the time to be with us here today, and I look forward to an effective collaboration and to providing a sustainable solution for workplace safety, health, and environment for Brunei. I would also like to thank all those involved who made this event a resounding success, and for the efforts of the HSC fraternity who work tirelessly to ensure the safety of others in the workplace. Thank you once again to all of you present here today, and I look forward to working closely with you in the coming months and providing a sustainable solution for workplace safety, health, and environment for Brunei. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Jamie. May we now invite our first speaker, Elsaid Salahamuda, Senior Inspector of Industry Sector, to share a brief introduction to Sheena and its functions, as well as discuss the relevant Hsc legislation specific to working at height in Brunei Darussalam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Everybody can hear me? Good morning, everybody. Here we just give some quick introduction about Sheena. So Sheena is set up under the Safety Health Environmental National Authority Order 2018 and enforced in April 2017. Sheena is a single national authority for enforcement of regulatory matters relating to safety, health, environment within the workplace, as well as radiation matter, since the Radiation Protection Order is also under Sheena. Sheena headed by Chief Executive Officers, who is accountable for Sheena function and affairs, and reporting direct to Minister in charge. Minister in charge is the Minister of Energy. Sheena have appointed inspectors and authorized officers with specific legal powers to regulate and enforce HSC law and radiation matters as well. As you know, Sheena visions is very simple. We are committed to make a change and make Brunei a safe place to live and work. Next. So how to achieve this, how to make Brunei a safe place to live and work? Through our functions. So we have a main functions, which is inspections. For example, an inspector from Sheena under Section 41 of Workplace Safety Health Order 2009 have the power to inspect and examine any workplace to ensure compliance with the law and to find if there is any breach of the law. This inspection could be announced visit, so we call it inspections, or could be unannounced visit, and we call it monitoring visit. Also, one of the main function of Sheena is an investigation. So investigation in case of occupational disease or in case of accidents or in case of dangerous occurrence. And SHENA made aware about it through IIN, initial notification incidents. So SHENA will might to investigate. So why we investigate? To find immediate and underlying causes and to improve the safety management in place and to avoid reoccurrence of these incidents. Also, SHENA, our MH team at Major Accident Hazards team, review also safety case for hydrocarbon facilities, oil and gas. SHENA also as a regulator also providing guidance. So this guidance to help the industry and non-industry sectors and MH sectors and everybody within the nations to how they can comply with the law. So for example, we have 17 IGN industrial guidance notes since 2019 in different topics: lifting, scaffolding, work at heights, risk management, confined space. The last IGN was about diving. So all this IGN will help industry how to comply with the law. Okay, next. Sorry, okay. Sorry, can you come back again? Also, SHENA, I forget to mention about SHENA registration. So also SHENA, according to Section 32 of Workplace Safety Health Order, do registration for some certain person. So any person to act as authorized examiner for lifting or authorized examiner for visual vessels, or any workplace safety health order officer or workplace safety health coordinators or workplace safety health auditors or training provider need to register with SHENA. So SHENA will assess his application, and in case of successful application, SHENA will issue him approval of certificate. So you can go to our website and you can see a different type of registration we do as part of our function according to Section 32 of the and Section 33 of the Workplace Safety Health Order 2009. Okay. You can see this is the graph about the total fatality in Brunei. So before I start to talk about this graph, I would like to give some simple definition of the working at height. So what is mean of working at height? So working at height is any work at any place where if precaution were not taken, a person could be fall at distance liable to cause personal injury. So you are working at height if you are working above the ground, or you working near to the edge, or you could liable to fall through opening or through fragile surface, or if there is any hole or any opening in the ground, so you might be liable to fall to this one. So this is mean work at height. Just to understand what is work at height. So from this graph, you can see since 2013 until 2021 until now, we have 67 accidents, 67 fatalities. These all fatalities happen in the workplace. Majority of it happened as a construction site. 28 out of the 67 is happening because of falling from height. So falling from height is considered the main cause of fatalities. Falling from height, it is 42% of all these accidents. You can see from the graph also in 2013 we have 5 accidents, fatality, 2018 5. This year we have 3 fatalities because falling from heights. Falling from heights, we have serious injuries this year also. So we have a lot of accidents happen because falling from heights. So it is very dangerous, and that's why we have to manage the risk of these hazardous activities. Okay, Nikas. This is the legal framework. So I would like to talk about the legal framework governing the management of this high-risk activity working at heights. So we have the orders, and under the order there is a regulation. So mainly construction regulation and general provision regulation. It's talking about management of the falling of from heights. Just to give you a heads up also as well, so SHENA will have very soon working at heights regulation, which is talking specifically about working at heights, but this is just in draft, so expecting a new regulation to come out. But at this moment we have the orders and the regulation which cover working at heights management. Okay, next. So Before I talk about this slide, so this is the duty of person. I would like to just briefly explain the duty of employers and occupiers and principals in terms of work at height. So if you refer to section 11, duty of occupiers in the Workplace Safety Health Order, it's talking about the occupier need to provide safe access and egress. So occupier need to provide a safe method for the worker to go to work at height. For example, mobile elevating working platform or tower scaffolding. So it is a duty of occupier to provide this safe access and egress. Duty of employer. Employer also playing very important roles. So employer duty under section 12 of Workplace Safety Health Order to provide enough training and instructions and information for the workers will be going to work at height. So he need to brief him the dangers of his working. He need to brief him how to use the personal protective equipment. So if you give him a harness, so he should explain to him how to use his harness, where to hook this harness, where is the anchor points, and also have to explain to him the safe use of the equipment and the brief of the work planning. So employer also have to plan the work for the workers, how to and brief him about the message statement, how to work safely at height. Also, employer duty to provide supervision. Supervision work at height is very hazardous activities. That's why it's very important to give adequate supervision. So adequate supervision to ensure there is implementation of the control measure and the control measure being taken is sufficient. So this is duty of employers. Duty of principals. So according to section 14A of the Workplace Safety Health Order, if you choose someone, for example, a facility manager or a building owner, and you choose someone to work at height, so to do some painting activity for you or renovation or for your building, so you have to choose the right contractors. So you must choose the right contractor with the right expertise, so he can work safely. So if you choose contractors with low expertise and in terms of work at height, so you are breaching the law. So this is section 14, which is the duty of principal. Of course, employers or principal or occupiers cannot control everything. Also, it's important behavior of humans. So behavior of someone work at height. That's why we have section 15. You can see the slide. So section 15 is talking about duty of person at work. So behavior of the person work at height, he should behave in a responsible manner. He should use the equipment being provided to him. He should apply the training being given to him by his employers. He should work safely. He should take care of his own safety. He should take care of others' safety as well. And there is a penalty if you breach this law, which is 1,000. You can see section 15 of the order. Next. This is some provision also mentioned in the law. So mostly here we talk about general provision and we talk about construction. So this is in particular regulation 23 of general provision regulation. So also it's talking about if you have inside the workplace, inside work site or inside factory, you have in openings. So this opening must be guarded. So you should have a guardrails around this opening because this opening someone might be fall down, or if you have, or could be also covered. So a duty of person in control of this factory, in control of the work site, to ensure any manhole will be guarded or covered. And here also talking about the fall arrest system. So also if you work at height, employers or occupiers need to provide fall arrest system. Fall arrest system means you have harness, you have a lanyard, and you have anchor points. These anchor points could be a points like a bad eyes or eyeballs, or could be a lifeline. So lifeline could be horizontal, could be vertical, could be retractable lifelines. This is to hook the lanyards. And it's very important to mention here, this hooking of the lanyard should be all the times during the task. He should be tie off his lines all the times. How to do this one? Sometimes you have to use two hooks. So the you have a harness and you have two lanyards, so you can hook all the time. So if you remove one point, you can hook the other points. Here also about the rescue equipment. So if you control falling from heights through fall arrest system, so you need to have a rescue emergency plan, and you have to have a rescue equipment. So for example, if someone fall down, it will have a trauma suspension. This trauma suspension will cause dangers for this person suspended. So you have to rescue him as soon as possible. So how to rescue him as soon as possible? You have to have a rescue plan. For example, you rescue him through using mobile elevating working platform. So you have to make this mobile elevating working platform ready on the site all the times. Or you rescue him through your rescue kits. So rescue kits should be available also on the site. And also everybody should be brief, and it should be as an emergency drill being carried out how to rescue people. So full arrest system always need to be accompanied with emergency rescue plan and emergency rescue equipment, and this equipment must be ready on the site all the time, and everybody must be brief, and should be also first aider in case of someone fall from heights. It should be a first aider on the site all the times in case of something happen. You can see also the penalty of breaching this law. So regulation 23 of construction regulation, if you breach it, so there is fine not exceeding 20,000 or imprisonment not exceeding 2 years or both. Next. Next. Okay, so this is also other regulation. This is extracted from construction regulation, which is talking about regulation 22. So here mostly talking about the guardrails. So if someone work near to the edge, he need to be provided with the guardrails. These guardrails will protect him from falling from heights. So this guardrails, according to the law, it should have also adequate strength. So why it should have adequate strength? So in case of someone lean to these guardrails, so the guardrails will not give way. During inspection, I see people using rope or warning tape just to act as a guardrails. Of course, this is not acceptable because it will not protect people near to this. Because anyone lean to this rope, the rope will give away and someone will fall down. So, for example, according to some jurisdiction like OSHA, this guardrail should have enough minimum strength of 100 kg, which as a weight of person could lean to this guardrails. Usually guardrails erected at 1 meter, so 1,000 mm, and also sometimes there is mid rails and there is toy board. The mid rails usually it will be erected on 60 centimeter, and toy board. What's the use of toy board? Use of the toy board to protect people from underneath from drop objects. So it also is important to have it. So this is regarding the guardrails and the control of your work near to the edge. Next. This again work on the roof. It also covered in regulation 23 of the construction regulation, which is talking also about if you work at the roof. So working from the roof, it is very dangerous, and the industry well known about these hazards working of the roof, because if you work on the roof, you might work near to the edge of the roof, so you could be liably fall from heights, or you could be also fall through the roof, so opening the roof. We have in 2019, we have accident, someone fell through the roof. So the roof was covered by some fragile materials. It was made of fiber cement sheet. So when the worker step on this fiber cement sheet, the fiber cement sheet under the weight of the person, it gave way and the person fall to his death. This happened back to 2019. So also the falling from the roof has to be managed. How to manage? Again, full arrest system with anchor points, and also you have to protect the worker also from sliding, because also a roof could be have a slope angle. So you have to protect him by providing him also a safe access and egress. For example, you are using mobile elevating working platform, or you are using scaffolding. Once he go on the roof, he should provide him with, for example, walkway, sometimes crawling board. It is a good for the working on the roof, especially if you have a doubt this roof could be fragile. So you have to provide him with a crawling board and anchor points. He should hook his anchor point all the times. So he should have 2 linear, so he could hook all the times. And also, this law is actually given to the duty of occupiers, because as we mentioned, section 11 talking about the duty of occupiers. So duty of occupier to provide safe access and egress, and also safe workplace. Also, employer and in principle must ensure this also protection being used. So this is a compilation duty of occupier, principal, and employers. Next, I think this is my final slides. Yeah. Zuana, to talk about concern of work attachment.
Thank you, El Sayed. From this presentation, we learned that principals, occupiers, employees, and persons at work have a part to play in ensuring the safety of any workplace, and the compliance to the law is required to ensure the highest safety standards are upheld. SHENA continues to work together with stakeholders from government and industry to ensure greater safety measures to effectively reduce the number of workplace incidents in Brunei Darussalam. We now invite our next speaker, Shazwana Soyono, Inspector 2 of Industry Sector, to present on the concerns for working at height.
Thank you, Azima. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. Can you just give me a quick thumbs up if you can hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thumbs in the air. Nabila, can you move the slide forward, please? Thank you. So as most of you would already know, SHENA has been very actively conducting our enforcement actions. So elaborating on what my colleague El Sayed has mentioned earlier just now, we do inspections. So there's two types of inspections that we do. That's monitoring visit, which is an unscheduled visit to a workplace. This is usually based on a public complaint, or it's when SHENA does our surveillance, so-called. We just drive around and find workplaces. And we have inspections where it's pre-planned with the company and the occupier of the workplace. And we tell them what kind of documents we want, what kind of things we want to see. So it's a very pre-planned event, per se. And last one, investigation. This is usually following a fatality or a serious injury or a dangerous occurrence. So SHENA inspectors would carry out an investigation to identify what sort of HSC failings were there, or if there are any serious breaches of the workplace safety and health order. So the next few slides will be a compilation of pictures and sharings that we have based on our previous inspections and monitoring visits. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is some of the pictures that we've taken when we were on inspection. Maybe to make the session more interactive, our participants can type out what kind of unsafe observations you can see from any of these pictures. You can type it in the chat box if you want. Yes, Norazman says no safety harness. Amirul as well, no safety harness. Aside from that, no guardrails. Yes, correct. Unprotected guardrails and open space. Okay, yeah, completely agree. So if we look at the picture on the far left, you have the guy in a starfish position. This is still my favorite picture ever, which is actually bad, but he's working at the edge of the building, but there's no protection from him falling whatsoever. So similar to his colleagues at the top. If you see at the top right picture, the guy is actually wearing a helmet and a safety harness, but his colleague isn't. And I think when we went here, even though he was wearing a full body safety harness, he wasn't actually attached to anything. And though this picture is very zoomed in, but they're actually working on a residential flats. And it's not the 2-floor flats, it's I think 5 floors or 6 floors or more, and they're at the very top. At the bottom, you see a guy working on the roof with no protection whatsoever. So the chances of him sliding off the roof and falling is quite high. And this is an example of an opening on the floor. And you can see the rebars protruding as well, which presents a different kind of hazard. But again, someone can just easily fall into the opening on the ground. And lastly, on the bottom right is 2 people hanging out on the roof with no PPE whatsoever, just having a chat. Next slide, please. Okay, so based on our inspections and monitoring visits, the main findings that we find on site is, as correctly pointed out by you guys in the chat box, is there is no safety controls, barriers, or protections, meaning there is no guardrails, there is no perimeter railing or something to avoid them from falling off. And not wearing PPE, for example, the safety harness and helmets. We will be talking more about PPE later on. Lack of supervision. I think Al-Said also mentioned this in his part. One of the investigations that we conducted, the guy that fell, we don't even know what exactly happened to the person because he was just working on his own. I think his colleague or his supervisor was not around. And by the time that he found him, he was already on the ground. There's a lack of HSC awareness, knowledge, and safety training, especially for workers that are working at height, because most times employers or companies, they pick the worker based on whether they're brave enough to work at height or if they're willing to take the risk to get paid for that kind of task, which is not fair on the worker. The occupiers, the employers, the companies are supposed to provide the training and make sure that the workers are competent to do their jobs. There's also a lack of hazard identification, safety briefing, and toolbox talk. So there's no formal system or way for them to actually train and raise the awareness of the workers around them. And they don't actually know what are the hazards and risks associated with their activities. Hence, they can't actually control it appropriately. And lastly, not following rules and procedures. So we hear this complaint sometimes from companies as well, where they say like, oh, I provided them PPE, I've provided all this protection, I've given them training, but they just don't want to follow our controls, our procedures, our rules, our SOPs. So that's why at the beginning of the presentation, there was the duty of persons at work, meaning to say that it's not just the responsibility of your employer, your company, but it's also the individual's responsibility as well to make sure he is safe and the people that are working with him is safe. Yes, I see Nur Shamimi mentioned there's also issues with language barrier. So this can be a big part of the workers not having awareness and not following rules. So companies and employers should take that into consideration. Next slide, please. Okay, so in this slide, we categorize the main findings into people and safety system and documentation. For people, again, it's a lack of awareness on the law itself, which is the Workplace Safety and Health Order 2009. You'd be surprised how many companies have never heard of the legislation at all, let alone the workers. So again, there's a general lack of HSC awareness and knowledge, no safety training. We've talked about that, non-compliance to PPE, we've mentioned that as well. And the last item I think is quite interesting, the absence of intervention culture. So if we talk about intervention culture, I think it's something that's already established in maybe the oil and gas sector or the subcontractors of major oil and gas companies. But in general, the intervention culture in Brunei is still a bit weak for other general industries. I don't know whether people are just too polite or nice to each other that you don't want to kind of intervene. But for those who don't know what an intervention culture is, it's when you see your colleague working in an unsafe manner, or maybe he's not wearing his PPE or he's not following the right SOP, you go to the person and say, hey, you're not doing this properly. Can you do this instead? Or can you stop what you're doing and then fix the situation? But of course, you do that in a respectful and constructive manner. For the safety system and documentation part, we often find there's a lack of safety management system, policies, and HSC plan. So in essence, there is no documented evidence of the company's commitment towards HSE, systems in place to make sure the HSE is managed and well controlled and the workers are happy and have the awareness that they need to conduct their tasks safely. There's also a lack of risk management and SOPs. We'll talk more about this later on. Poor absence of emergency response plan and incident reporting. This is also one of the things that we see often when we conduct investigations into fatalities. The companies or the workers don't actually know what to do when someone is seriously injured or when they have a big fall. Of course, they're going to call like the ambulance, the bomba, or whatever, whoever relevant, but they don't actually know the chain of command or like the flow of what should be done. So of course, in these kind of situations, you would panic. And if you don't know what to do, it's just going to make things worse. And it might have spared some time that the injured person could have really needed. And lastly, no HSC performance monitoring. So this means that the company isn't actually tracking their number of minor injuries, the number of serious injuries, if they have like an intervention system in place, how many interventions were made that month. So these are the kind of statistics that can give an idea to the company of their standard in HSE and what they need to improve. Next slide, please. Okay, we have a whole slide on scaffolds. So this is our main findings just on scaffold alone. The top one being incomplete working platform. For example, using a single plank. So we just want to emphasize that this is something that is typically seen all over Brunei, but it is definitely unacceptable. Because the fact that you are using a single plank for a person to walk on, if he just takes one step left, one step right, one step back, he could just fall straight down. And you don't know the structural integrity of your plank. Who's to say the next day that you're using, when you step on the plank, there's a crack and you might fall through. So companies or even employees, you have to know that the working platform has to be complete. So if your employer or your company provides like the kind of scaffolding that you see in this slide, don't even accept to work in that kind of situations, because you are definitely putting yourself at risk as well as breaking certain laws as well. The second item, absence of proper access and egress, is also something we typically see. So workers would just typically kind of climb on the side of the scaffold, trying to turn into Spider-Man or something, and they use the same way to get down. So you can imagine if the scaffold is not secure, that would easily cause the scaffold to collapse. Missing toe boards and guardrails. Guardrails is to protect the person from actually falling over, and toe boards is to prevent objects from dropping onto people who are maybe working or walking around the area under there. Lack of bracing and secure tie-in. That is more to do with how secure your scaffold is. And improper base plate as well is to do with how secure the scaffold is to the building. So you want to prevent the scaffold from collapsing. Then no inspection from competent person. Say you've set up a scaffold, you think you have all the right features, you've met all the requirements, you still need a competent person with the right experience and the right background. They need to have had training to actually check and inspect your scaffold and say, okay, this scaffolding is safe to use. So they'll usually give like a scaff tag, something that's like green, okay, good to use. But they have to check it regularly and say, if they found something that's unsatisfactory, they would turn it to red, which means you can't use the scaffolding. And the last three would be lack of fall protection, absence of PPE, and again, we keep repeating the same thing, lack of training and competence of workers. Next slide, please. Okay, so based on our inspections and our monitoring visits, we don't just go there and then just come back and that's it. Depending on what we find on site and the severity of things on site, there are certain actions that SHENA can take as a regulator that's been mandated to us by law. And there's some that, for example, the warning letter. The warning letter is meant to be for first offenses of non-compliance to the laws that does not have any imminent danger. So it's a dangerous situation, but it's not going to kill someone like right there and then. So that could be a warning letter. But don't be fooled, even though it does say first offense, depending on what we find on the site and how bad the situation is, it might even go straight to a stop work order, which I think is every company's worst nightmare, a stop work orders when you are legally required to stop all your activities or partial activities, depending on the schedule of your stop work order, until certain things are rectified as required by SHENA. If not stop work order, you might be issued with a remedial order. This is slightly more relaxed in a way that you don't have to stop your activities, but we're giving you some time, like a timeline to actually sort out and fix whatever is required to be improved. Just for your information, we are also working on issuing compound fines in the future. So this is similar to compound fines for other agencies, for example, like indiscriminate littering or dumping. where if we find something that is in breach of the law on site, we can just issue out a compound. And then the companies or the persons would have to pay. And lastly, and definitely something that I think everyone would want to avoid is legal prosecution. So legal prosecution is usually after we conduct an investigation, either after fatality or serious injury. And if there's enough evidence to show that there's been a serious breach of the law, then we might bring the principal, occupier, or employer to court. Next slide, please. Okay, safety requirements for working at height. Next slide. So this is pretty much a summary of everything we've discussed. We've discussed the bad. Now, what should actually be done? So you need to secure fencing. You need to secure, cover, and fence all floor openings, like the example that we showed earlier. So you can fence it around. It kind of looks like a baby protection thing for your stairs, just to make sure no one falls in. Secure foothold and handhold as reasonably practicable, especially when someone is working on a roof. Full body safety harness with sufficient anchorage and lifeline. So the example shown is this lovely mannequin who's wearing a full body safety harness. We know some companies are still wearing just the waist belt type, but this is also unacceptable because it doesn't actually provide that much protection for the person who falls. So a full body safety harness with the sufficient anchorage and lifeline should be there. Guardrails and handrails for any open sides, we've talked about this, and protection from siding roofs, example, a crawling board. So this is an actual crawling board that was prepared in Brunei, I believe, after an investigation. Next slide. Okay, so in this slide, we are summarizing what's required for scaffolding. So you need to have experienced and trained personnel, guardrails, barriers and toe boards, sufficient anchorage and attachment for your safety harness, a safe working platform provided, definitely not a single plank, safe access and egress, he's using a ladder here, control measures for falling objects, so this is again the toe board, protruding objects and other obstructions adequately controlled, yep, so people don't fall or trip over while they're working at height, and proper and appropriate personal protective equipment. And I think what's missing from this slide is actually the inspection by a competent person. Next slide, please. Okay, taking a step back to managing your hazards and risks. You need to actually know what the hazards and risks at your places are, at your workplace is, to actually control it adequately. And this is actually a legal requirement under our Workplace Safety and Health Risk Management Regulations 2014. And it's simplified by a flowchart here on the right in green. So identify your hazards, and then you assess your risk. Risk meaning the severity and likelihood of that hazard from happening. So how bad is it going to be if it happens, and what are the chances of it happening? So after you've determined that, you can prioritize which hazards and risks you want to focus on, or you should prioritize on, and then you determine your control measures. So when determining your control measures, you should be following the hierarchy of control on the left side here, which is the upside down triangle, or it looks like a pizza. Next slide, please. So zooming in on the hierarchy of control and relating it back to working at height. So the most effective method will always be to eliminate. So say the hazard is obviously falling from height. So you try to get rid of the need to actually work at height. Can you use extendable tools? Like, for example, if you're painting, can you just use a super long handle? If you can do that, then you can do the work from the ground. And you can bring down objects or assembly at ground level instead. I think there are some street lights where you can actually bring it down to like a person's height. So you can actually change the bulb or like do maintenance on the ground rather than sending the guy up. You have substitution. If you cannot eliminate the situation or the work activity, then substitute it. You can use a mobile elevated work platform or mounted access ladders, which can substitute maybe the use of a scaffold, which is less safe compared to the MEUP, or like a portable ladder. You can replace it with a mounted access ladders that's permanently there and secured. If substitution is also not allowed, I can go for engineering controls. So examples of this is safety nets, fall arrest system, and soft landing system. And this one, even if you have engineering controls, if you want to make it more effective, you should have administrative controls. And sometimes administrative controls is a legal requirement anyway, for example, permit to work. So you need to have that, and they kind of work together to make sure that the activity is as safe as it can be. So examples of administrative controls would be permit to work, rescue plan, your SOPs, and competency training for your workers as well. And lastly, in this circumstance, it's last and least. PPE is actually the least effective method of control for your worker. It's funny how when Sheena goes to companies, they often say like, oh yeah, we care about safety, you know, we give PPE to our workers, as if PPE is the be all and end all of safety. But actually it is the least effective control of the worker. And examples of this could be full body safety harness and safety helmet. So when introducing controls, make sure you go at the top, just eliminate, and then work your way down to PPE. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'll just fly through the next bits. Sheena has developed documentations and stuff for guidance of companies and employers, even employees if they want to. So we have the construction self-assessment checklist. You can download the document if you scan the QR code. If not, you can go to our website and you can download it under downloadable documents. It's at the very bottom of the Sheena website. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Nabila. Thank you. We also have industry guidance notes, IGN. So we have guidance to work at height and working at height rescue plan. So this is all the documentation, like all the plans that you would need. Next slide, please. IGN guidelines for the safe use of scaffolding. So remember our slide earlier where it summarizes all the requirements for scaffold. So this document will go more in depth. There is, I think, a few hundred pages. No, I think 75 pages if I'm not mistaken, but it is definitely in depth. And whatever answers you have, this is probably whatever questions you have, this is probably has the answers. Next slide, please. And we also have other documentation that we write up, usually just as a reminder to companies or following any injuries or fatalities. So we have workplace safety notices. We developed one on edge protection and perimeter guard railing. There's also a Malay version of this available on our website. I think this was based on a fatality where the worker was carrying stuff up stairs on a construction site, and it didn't have any perimeter or guard railing on it, so unfortunately he fell to his death. We have safety precautions to avoid fall from height. This is a very generalized document or a summary of what you would need to know or are the requirements for to avoid fall from height. And the most recent one is the safety and control measures during lifting operations involving persons working at height. So this is the picture just now. I'm not sure if you realize. Yes, okay. This is my last slide anyway, so it's fine. So yeah, you can go through our website and take a look at all the documents that we have in place, our IGNs, our WSNs, our NTIs. And if you have any queries or would like to know more, you can always email us at info@sheena.gov.bn. And I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Shazwana, for the insightful presentation, which highlight the various elements that need to be considered when establishing a safe working environment for work at heights. With that, we now move on to the question and answer session. Also, kindly be reminded to state your name and organization as well, and you may ask a live question by clicking the hand raise button on top of the panel. Again, you may type your question at the chat box, or you may ask a live question by clicking the hand raise button on top right panel. Our moderator, Mr. Christopher Ang, Acting Head of Legal Division SHENA, will now handle the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Azima, for introducing me. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you've learned a lot from the two presentations that were presented by El Sayed and Shazwana just now. So now we've entered the Q&A phase. You can continue to type the questions in the chat box. However, let's deal with some of the questions from the hand raise that have been used from the hand raise function. I think there's a question from Mr. Terry Jaya Surya. So if you may please proceed.
Thank you, Christopher. Yeah, indeed, a very insightful presentation from the presenters. My thoughts around HSC, I'm just reflecting also on Captain Jamie's note on HSC being a HSC compliant nation by 2035. So the question I want to pose is, what are we doing as a nation to ensure that we get there? It's not too long to go. It's about 15 years to go. Are there thoughts of having some kind of an HSC academy, not only for academy, not only just for in terms of training, but also in terms of a pool of HSC professionals who would be able to serve the nation, taking us into that space in to meet 2035 or what's on. Thank you.
Yeah. Jamie, perhaps you can take this one.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Terry. Very interesting, and I wouldn't say it's a difficult question, but it's one that is very relevant for Brunei. HSC in the near present has started to gain awareness across the government and across industry. And there are a number of stakeholders who are working towards improving HSC, not only at the workforce level, but also to ensure that people are well educated, and there is a process to train people in HSC matters, all the way from WSH coordinators, WSH officers, all the way through to becoming a career in HSC. We have relevant stakeholders in the ministry. We've got the MIC team, MISC, as well as people from the Job Center and IBT who are supporting this drive to bring HSC center stage. You may call it an academy, but at this current stage, it is working towards ensuring we've got sufficient number of HSC proponents or people involved with HSC. And the end result is to create a workforce that is dealing with HSC with the understanding that this becomes something that is common practice for everybody. So yes, it is definitely a thought for the future. In terms of the education system, HSC is being treated as a topic area, and there is plans afoot to take this further into the process for most people, including through Sheena as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Jamie, and thank you, Christopher. Thanks for the thoughts on the share, Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry, for your question. Do we have anyone with their hand raised? If not, I believe there have been some. Oh, okay, so we have one here, but I'll deal with this one first. There have been a few questions about A-frames being asked in the chat box. Perhaps El Sayed or Shazwana, you can deal with this. One of the questions is, does the A-frame have to actually undergo and pass inspections for integrity? There are also associated questions on, can A-frame type scaffold be used to support equipment during work only with no person stepping on it? And also the general question as to whether or not A-frames in the use of scaffolding are actually legal per se. So I'll invite maybe El Sayed, if you'd like to start off on this matter. Thank you.
Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So in general, any scaffolding need to be certified and tagged as a safe to be used. So as a scaffolding inspectors need to go inspection, usually is every 7 days, or if any case of exposure of the scaffolding for any something could be jeopardize the integrity of the scaffolding. So this is in general. Particular for A-frames, as my colleague Jimmy mentioned in the chat box, it's not recommended. However, as understood, it's been used widely in the constructions, and it could be used with some justification. So justification could be as some engineering control. So as a professional engineer, he designed, a civil engineer designed these A-frames and have a control in place. For example, they have enough guardrails, mid-rail toy board, blank secured. There is a base plates. So it could be used for scaffolding for walking platforms, but with some justification. The justification here will be engineering design and will be also certified by scaffolding inspectors. For but in general, yeah, it can be used. Some standard actually it cover, like if you refer to Singapore standard, if you refer to SS 280, it cover frame scaffold. So the frame scaffold, metal frame scaffold could be used as long as you comply in this standards SS 280. In terms of, like, for example, if the H-frame scaffold is only used to hold the formwork, in this case, do you need to certify and tag it and have a scaffolding tag? It's not really necessary, but it must be designed by the competent person. So a competent person, a civil engineer, construction engineer, have to make sure, because in this case, we are not using as a work platform. We are using as just to hold the cement, during formwork installation. So in this case, it's not really necessary to certify and tag it, but you must, the construction engineer must, a qualified person in construction engineer must design it and should sign it. This is safe to be used, and to verify the bearing capacity of this scaffolding, it will hold the load, and it will not give way under the weight of the cement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, El Sayed, for giving us a little bit more clarity concerning the use of A-frames. We'll take a question now from the hand raise. Mr. Ridwan Kamarul Zaman, if you may please proceed. Thank you.
Hi, Ridwan Kamarul Zaman, Wireline SDO from Amtur Corporation. My question concerns the language barriers with a lot of personnel. So does Sheena have any plans to expand the languages available for your guidance notes? Currently, it's only available in English and Malay.
Perhaps Jamie, you can.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So it's a very, very good observation. I think the opportunity remains with the occupier. So under the Workplace Safety and Health Order, the occupier is responsible to provide instruction and information to the workers. Sheena provides guidance in the two relevant languages for the country. The working language in the country is English, and the majority language for the country is Malay. However, what we can say is that we are currently working with a group called the Industry Hsc Group as well, formed of senior leaders from industry. And there is an opportunity for people like yourself who are committed towards HSE to support and to drive this change where necessary, to develop maybe posters or guidance that is based on another regional language. I think there's value in it, and we seek the support of the general community and HSE officers out there who can help us make this change for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any, thank you, Ridwan, for your question, and thank you, Jamie, for your answer to the question. Do we have anyone who wishes to ask a question live? While waiting for any live questions, I think one of the questions that came in during chat was from Juliandi, who's asked whether or not there is any requirement for training or certification for certain areas of heights, whether they're increasing or decreasing based on the heights. So Shazwana, do you have any views on this?
Thanks, Chris. I think the requirement for training and competency isn't by height. I think as long as you're working above a height of 2 meters, then that's considered working at height. And to work at height, you need to have the right skills, the competency and experience to do that. So I guess Jamie and Elsaid can help me on this because I don't recall anything in the law that says like, okay, you need to have this training for more than 2 meters. But if you go up to 10 meters, you need like a different kind of training. So maybe you could add in.
I think I can add something. Maybe again, it will be based on the task. Your task? So in general, you need to have a brief. So employers, as we mentioned, Section 12 of the Workplace Safety Health Order is talking about the employer should be provide enough trainings and information and instruction for the workers to work safely. So this is in general. So in general, you need to have a safety briefings, how dangerous you work at heights, and what is the safe use of the harness, for example, and where to hook the harness, and what is the misstatement, and what is the work planning, and you need to follow this one. This is in general. If you do some particular task, for example, you are scaffolder. So in this case, you need a competent scaffolding, because in this case, you are considered as a competent scaffolder. So nobody should involve in installing or dismantling scaffolding without certificate. So the certificate from approved training provider. Or sometimes there is activity industrial rope access. Industrial rope access also needs some certain competency level. So this and also training provider need to be also recognized by ERATA. So it always based on the task. But the minimum here we're talking about awareness. So awareness of how to use of the dangers of the activity, awareness how to use the safety equipment, awareness of the misstatement you are working on it, and applying of these trainings. So this is the minimum, and if the complexity of the task has been increased, so it should be more trainings and assessment, competency assessment and verification of competency, and refresher trainings.
Thank you very much, Wana and El Sayed, for your clarifications concerning training with work at heights. We see that there's a number of questions in the chat, but how many minutes do we have left?
3 minutes.
Okay, so maybe we'll do what we can to answer the questions in chat. I'd just like to raise 2 comments for the that I've picked up from the conversation in the chat box for the panel. The first one is a comment made by Mr. James Carlin, which says that supervision and management seem to be ignoring their responsibilities. Are these persons being cited for their failures? And also, there's a comment from Mr. Amir Hamza from LNG, who states that people tend to underestimate the consequence of a routine job. So, Shazwana, do you have any views on this?
Yeah, I think we'll starting off with, was it James's comment about supervision and management being, what was it?
These people are not are these people being cited for their failures in supervising and management, particularly in the area of work at heights?
Yeah, definitely. Because when we identify any breaches of the workplace safety and health order, we also check whether the occupier or employer or the principal has done their part, because there are certain duties under the law, as Alsaid mentioned. So we would mention this if we identify serious breaches or we find that the employer, principal, occupier have not done enough to protect the worker while working at height. And the second question
one was a comment concerning how people tend to underestimate the consequence of a routine job. So just wondering whether you had any views on this.
Yeah, completely agree. It's all about complacency when we're so used to doing something every day. Like, for example, we wake up, we brush our teeth. We don't really see any hazards or risks associated with it anymore, because we've done it so many times that we feel like it's just going to be okay every time. But this is the trap that employers and employees have to avoid, especially with something as high risk as work at height. Even though you've had experience in it, even though you've done it however many times over the years, you cannot be complacent, and you can't kind of relax down on being cautious and everything. You should still follow what you need to do, the SOPs, the protections and all, just to make sure that you remain safe.
I think we can take one more question. There is a question from Wong. So there is a verbal question, sorry. So Lim Sian, can you please proceed? Anyway, while waiting for there is a question, general question. Are there any tips in the intervention of unsafe acts with construction companies, and what information is required when filing a report to SHENA? Yes, Jamie, would you like to take that?
Yeah, thank you very much. So in terms of intervention culture, I think it starts with the management of an organization, and it should be the priority of the leadership to ensure that there's proper safety supervision on site. The opportunity is, as the law prescribes, that companies consider WSH officers, and specifically for construction companies, for them to have WSH coordinators if they're less than 10 million in contract value. So when you start by having the right people on site, that starts to build a culture on site, because these safety officers, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, are the ones who are trying to make a difference on site. They are the ones who are providing the employees with the right work practices. They're intervening when is necessary, and they ensure that the employers are fully appraised of the situation of making the site safe. And where there are gaps, they're the ones who are providing the necessary recommendations for improving the site. So I think it is definitely the responsibility of the senior management to ensure this happens. And when you talk about informing SHENA in a report, I think it's fairly straightforward. We would like authentic reports. So we would like to know that the person who is reporting has really and actually seen something. Pictures do help. Information from the individual to say that there is a concern, providing us information of the location and some details about what they have seen on site does help. What we would also ask individuals is, where possible, intervene, because you are the person who's on site. You have seen something. You have the opportunity to ask those people whether they are aware of the safer measures to be taken. So I think it's a team effort. If we're going to change the culture in the country, it requires everybody's support. It's not one organization, and it's not a solution that SHENA can drum up overnight. We're a small group of people trying to make a difference, and with your support, we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. I think we have one hand raised for this question before we close off from Norliana. If you may please proceed.
Hi, it's Michael. Good morning, everyone. So
morning.
my question is to Shazwana. So Shazwana, in your presentation, you shed some light on the barrier breakdowns or the common traits, especially in terms of working at height incidents. I suppose it is a fair judgment to say that there is a common lack of understanding in what makes a safe working at height is. So I suppose I'm quite interested to know what SHENA is doing to bridge this gap. And following up from the from the conversations and from the comments in the chat box, I see that people have also started to identify that perhaps some of these companies or or these operations, they do not understand the essence of this safe working at height, especially in terms of the initial contract startup. Is that something that you can comment on? Thank you.
Thank you, Stevena. So I guess the way that SHENA tries to support is, like we mentioned, we develop all these guidances all the time. We've come up with like documents. I think most people are sick of our mailing list already, but we have the documentary side, and we also go on the ground. So we go to site, we go for inspections, we go to monitoring visits, we talk to the employers, we talk to employees, and we try to help the company to develop or to improve themselves. And lastly, we have outreach programs such as this. So SHENA is trying our best to get this information out there, but at the same time, the participants or like the end target audience has to be willing to accept it as well, because we definitely don't have enough people to go to each and every work site. So again, I think touching back on what Jamie mentioned about in taking like a whole nation approach to actually improve the HSC culture in Brunei. It's the same with working at height as well. So we need to be wary of what's out there, take what we can from it, spread the word around, even within your own industries as well. If you feel like there's a lack in working at height arrangements or protection, then you can do something, you can take initiative and do something on your own to actually raise the awareness and raise the standards. You can't just rely on Sheena like all the time. I hope that answered your question, Siti Liana, but definitely Sheena will continue. Like, we are aware that this is an issue. It is still an issue. It will probably still be an issue like for years to come. So we are focusing a lot of energy into actually improving this part, like the work at height activity. So I hope that answers your question. If Jamie and Elside want to add in more, please feel free.
Yeah, I think maybe I can add to that is we are pushing currently to increase the number of safety officers in the country. We are also in the next year looking at compound fines, so that it will be a further deterrent across industry. But I think at the end of the day, people need to stop and take focus and understand their responsibility. If we're going to change the nation's view on HSC, it needs to start with you and me. If we can do that, we can make that change happen. And I believe the support of everyone in this event is a starting point for that change. So take the time to spread the message across your organizations, and definitely talk to your friends and your networks as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shazwana and Jamie, and thank you, Liana, for the very relevant question that you asked concerning what future plans Sheena has. So I think with Liana's question, we end the question and answer session for this particular session. I'd like to thank all those who have contributed. We'll try to go through the questions in the chat box and provide the answers. But if you feel that there are any burning questions that still need to be asked, there is another question and answer session later on, which you can feel free to chime in as well. So without further ado, I'll pass on to the MC, Azima, to take us through to the next part of the proceedings. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you to those who shared their questions, and thank you to the speakers as well for the clarifications. Questions that have not been addressed in today's session shall be addressed via Sheena's website, www.sheena.gov.bn, after the event. Alternatively, should you have any more inquiries, please feel free to email us at info@sheena.gov.bn. We would like to thank everyone for the participation in the Q&A session. Let's have a 5 minutes break. When we resume, we will hear presentations from our industry stakeholders, and we will be back at 10:30. Thank you. Right, welcome back everyone. May we invite our first external presenter, Mr. Clive Joseph Hyena, HSE lead from Mashore General Contractors Sendran Berhad, to share the safe practices to scaffold erection.
Thank you, Nurazima.
Welcome.
Who can share my slides, please? Okay, good morning, everyone. So sharing with you the safe practices in scaffold erection. Next slides, please. Okay, just to give you a brief background of our company. So Mashore Scaffolding Services was established in 1983. We provided the scaffolding for Brunei Shell Petroleum Company, Brunei LNG, EAL Refinery, SCAT Terminal, and other OGPs. Majority of our local contractors dealing with oil and gas industry also avail of our scaffolding expertise. Our scaffolding capabilities have been extended to our neighboring East Malaysia. Being the single local scaffolding service provider in the country in the past, we established the Mashore Training and Assessment Center that was accredited by CITB and City and Guilds UK. At present, we are one of the registered training organization in the country. Next slides. So this will be our agenda for my talk. We will have a short introduction about scaffolding, the standards and guidelines that we're using, scaffolders' competency, what is basic scaffold and advanced scaffold, scaffolding materials, and the safety considerations in scaffolding erection. Next slides, please. So what is a scaffolding? So scaffolding is generally defined as a temporary structure which provides access to a building, structure, equipment on different levels which persons may work from. Any structures that uses scaffolding components such as tubes and couplers that does not follow scaffolding process should not be considered as a scaffold. Scaffolding does not include any structure used merely to support an equipment or appliance, like our rest shed, temporary fencing, shoring. They are not considered as scaffold. So the scaffolding must be erected safely using approved scaffolding components complying to BS 1139 and BSEN 12811. Scaffolding works such as installation, erection, modification, and dismantling can only be carried out by qualified scaffolders and supervised trainees. Scaffolding can be either conventional or system scaffold. For now, I will be talking with you about conventional scaffold. Next slides, please. Next. Okay, so these are the guidelines and standards that we are following. We have this and National Access and Scaffolding Confederation guidelines. They are the UK national trade body for access scaffolding. They have this technical guidelines for operational guide and design guide for scaffolding. And we also have the SHENA industry guidance note, guidelines for the safe use of scaffolding. These guidelines provide information and details on the various types of scaffolding available in the country and the expectations placed on designers, contractors, inspectors, and the users of scaffolding to ensure scaffolding is safe for use throughout its life cycle. And we also, following the BSP standard safe use of scaffolding operation. These standards is a technical standards on certifications, qualifications, and documentations and operational guidelines for the requirements and criteria of design and scaffolding works within all BSP environments. Next slides, please. Next slides. Okay, so As what I said, scaffolding works such as installation, erection, and modification and dismantling can only be carried out by qualified scaffolders. So these are the positions in the table below that you can see on the screen for qualified scaffolders. So start from basic 1, go up to basic 2 until the advanced scaffolder and scaffolding supervisors. On the next column, you can see the qualifications needed to become on that position, and the experience, number of years of experience to become that position. Next slide. Next slides, please. Next slides, please. Next slides, please.
Excuse me, sir. Is it to be the basic part A scaffolder?
Yeah. Basic part A.
Yes. Is my slide not moving?
Okay, now it's basic part B. Before that slide.
Okay, I think it's still loading.
Okay. Okay. So for basic part A scaffolder, duties are to erect, modify, and dismantle limited types of basic scaffolds. It comes, okay. So he must be trained and qualified to carry out the following duties: install, modify, and dismantle basic independent scaffold, basic tower scaffold, basic birdcage scaffold, up to 3 lifts only. Next slide. Next slides, please. Okay, for basic part B scaffolder, so their duty is to install and dismantle all types of basic scaffolds up to 15 meters or 7 lifts. So they can install basic independent tower birdcage scaffold, plus basic access cantilever scaffold, and basic pavement or roof scaffold, up to 15 meters only. Next slides. Next slide, please. Okay, for advanced scaffolder, their duties are to erect, modify, and dismantle all types of scaffolds specified in basic scaffolds with addition of the types below. So he must be trained and qualified to carry out the following duties: install, modify, and dismantle complex overhead hanging access and support scaffold, specialized design scaffolds, and complex access false work support scaffolding. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so we will talk now what is scaffold, basic scaffold and advanced scaffold. Next, please. Next slide. So basic scaffold has a limit height of 15 meters or 7 lifts. Beyond this height, calculated design approved by qualified structural engineer shall be obtained, and it will be considered as advanced scaffold. Generally, basic scaffold should refer to NASC Technical Guide 2013 guideline. If the design complies to this guideline, the design approval from structural engineer is not required. So below there's a table 1 that is a basic scaffold load classification for independent scaffolding in the guideline. If you consider, there are classes very light duty, general purpose, and heavy duty. And the next column is what are the loadings that those classes can carry. For the general remarks on the last column, you can see also the specified design of that scaffolding. Like for very light duty, the maximum distance of each base should be 2.7 meters, and also the spacing of the transom should be, the maximum would be 1.2 meters. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next, please.
Yeah, we have experienced bad network at the moment. Yeah, please hold. Thank you.
Sir, I'm showing the advanced scaffold slide at the moment. Is it still loading from your side?
Yes.
Not yet loaded.
Where are we again? Can you see this?
Yes, we can see. Yes, there, okay. So for advanced scaffold, it is defined as any scaffold does not falls under the basic scaffold types. In brief, a scaffold is considered an advanced type if it falls into any one of the combination below. Basic scaffolding type that carries more than 15 meters or more than 7 lifts. And to cater load beyond specified in the standard load, like in the table 1 I showed before. Irregular configuration of scaffolding structure to accommodate site condition. Next slide, please. Okay, so for scaffolding materials, these are the standards that we are following. For scaffolding fittings, we have this BS 1139, EN 74. For scaffolding pole ladder, BS 1129. For scaffolding tubes, BS 1139 EN 39. And for scaffolding boards, next, can you click first? Yeah, we have this BS 2482 2009. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Okay, so safety consideration and scaffolding erection. Can you come back to the slide? Okay. So we have adapted this step 7 safe work process from assist and assure of BSP. So start work is not step number 1. So that is number 7. Step number 1 is planning. So we need to plan first. We need to talk about the work instruction, risk assessment, verify competency and fitness to work, and the permit to work. Then, after planning, we need to communicate. After communication, check equipment. Then, we will prepare the area, control energy. Then, final check. We final check, we double check and verify all controls are in place. So once verified, that's the time we can start the work. Next slide. So for planning, we need to consider the risk assessment. So the high risk for erecting or scaffolding and working at height is actually fall from height and drop object. We also have this NASC safety guidelines for prevention of falls in scaffolding operations. Next. So full body harness and double hook lanyards should be used when erecting scaffolding. We need to make sure that we have 100% tied up all time. And we also have tethered hand tools to prevent drop objects. Next. Next, we need to communicate through toolbox talk. We need to talk about the process, the roles and responsibilities, hazards and controls, ERP, and the learning from incident. So we always need to make sure that emergency response is always there before we start the work. That is always ready. Next, please. Then check equipment, checking for members, check for damage and corrosions, for fittings, wear and looseness. For boards, are they clean, free from nails, not warped or badly cracked? And for ladders, check for wear, movement of rungs and missing rungs. Next. And next, we need to prepare the area and control energy. We will arrange materials orderly, apply zone management, install barriers, hazard hunt, apply controls, and make sure that zone management are in place to prevent unauthorized entry. Next slide. After all of those 5 steps, we go for final check. Supervisor need to double check and verify all controls are in place. And that's the time that we can start erecting the scaffolding. Now we will erect scaffolding as per NASC TG 2013. So these are some safety considerations to scaffolding erection. Base plates are fixed to the bottom of each standard to spread the load to the ground. Sole boards used where base plate might sink into the ground. Timber sole boards should be at least 36 mm thick and 225 mm wide. Next. So for working platforms, platforms must not be overloaded. Accessways must be kept clear. Boards must be lashed to the transom. Because poorly lashed boards might move off the transoms and causing dangerous gaps, or it can also tilt up when stepped on. Next slide. And we need to consider guardrails and 2 boards. Guardrails and 2 boards must be fitted to prevent people from falling and drop objects. 2 boards on edge at least 150 mm high and fitted to the inside of the standards. Guardrail between 0.95 meter and 1 meter high to the highest rail. The gap between 2 board and guardrail should not exceed 0.75 meters. Guardrails on all scaffolds must have at least 2 rails. Next. So now showing with you the bad practices in erecting or scaffolding. If you can see in the first picture, access using bracing. So that is a bad practice as you may slip while doing it. So we recommended, and the right thing to do is to use ladder. Next. So these are also bad practices, standing on tubes and standing on fittings, that you can also slip and fall, and you can even damage the fittings itself. Next. So these are the recommended practices that we have. Use of step ladder or use of temporary work platform. As you can see in the first picture, installation of temporary anchor point. So every height, the scaffolders will install temporary anchor points so that their safety lanyards can be tied up on that. Next slide. And this is the last slide for me. So completed scaffold. After the erection is completed, so it will be self-inspected by the supervisor. Then the access will be locked. The scaffold will be tagged red, means it is not yet ready for use. It will be handed over to the scaffolding inspector. Only after the scaffolding inspector verifies that is safe, that's the time you can use. So that is the end of my slide. It's been a pleasure to share with you our safety practices in scaffold erection. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph, for the very informative sharing. By following these guidelines and practices, it can help company to improve the controls in place to ensure the safety of your workers in order to avoid any unwanted incidents. Distinguished guests, we now invite Muhammad Shadi bin Haji Majid, Scaffold Training Manager and Consultant from Megamas Sdn Bhd, to share the safe practices in scaffold inspection.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Chairman of the forum, committee members, fellow speakers, distinguished audience and participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning to all. First of all, on behalf of Megamas, we would like to convey appreciation and gratitude to Sheena for giving us the opportunity this morning to participate in conjunction with Sheena's 3rd year anniversary. Without further delay, the topic for this morning's session is safe practices of scaffold inspection. Objective is to raise awareness and knowledge on matters pertaining to scaffold inspection, responsibilities, and regulation related to it. Next page, please. Content for this morning's session will be what is scaffold inspection, the importance to the industry scaffolding practices, safety practices requirements, qualification of inspector, and how does it apply to the industry under the Brunei Legislation for scaffolding inspection. Next. So what is a scaffold inspection? It is a pre-check or prior to use of scaffolding to ensure it is safe to use and to ensure that the scaffolding components installed at work sites still remain maintained, each designed for a prolonged period of use. To ensure that the duty of scaffold meets with the intended use and the scaffolds not overloaded, protection provided from falling objects, and prevention of falls are in place by means of guardrails and toeboard. Some examples of basic and complex scaffold structure require inspection: independent scaffold, tower, hanger, cantilever scaffold, staircase. Regardless, it is a system or conventional tubes or fitting scaffolds. Next. Importance to the industry. Safety practices apply to installers and erectors. Under the HSO 2009, installers and erectors must ensure, as far as reasonably practicable, that the way the scaffold is installed is without risk to the safety of health of person who uses the scaffold and others who are at or in the vicinity of the worksite. That is including the surrounding and the public. And it gives responsibilities to importers and suppliers to ensure, as far as reasonably practicable, that the scaffold materials they manufacture, import or supplies are without risk to safety and health and meet recognized good industry standard, either international or local industry standard requirements. Next. Under Brunei legislation, can you click? Yes. Under the law, the Workplace Safety and Health Order 2009, it provides the overarching legal requirements on workplace safety and health in Brunei Darussalam. It places duty on principals, employers, employees, and self-employed persons to provide a safe place to work and prevent harm to persons, including the public. Workplace Safety and Health Construction Regulation 2014, the main requirements are for the protection of the safety, health and welfare of persons working on construction sites. It gives protection of people from physical injury, health and welfare, and to maintain health and well-being. And number 3, under IGN 01/2020, it is as reference and guidelines. Provide practical guidance on the safe use of scaffolding throughout its life cycle, from design to dismantling. It provides information and details on various types of scaffolding, expectation placed on designers, constructors, inspectors, and users of the scaffolding, and to ensure scaffolding is safe for use throughout its life cycle, and also make reference to applicable law. Next. Under IGN 01/2020, the duty holder that management or in control of scaffold at worksite must ensure that the scaffold and or its supporting structure are inspected by a competent person, i.e. scaffolding inspector or plant inspector. Incomplete or unattended scaffold shall not be authorized to access. Barriers must be in place, signboards, and if possible, ladders should be removed for unauthorized entry. The initial inspection upon completion before first use, and inspection required after adverse weather, after any alteration or modification, and at least once in every 7 days, inspection is a must. Next. Qualification of scaffold inspector. Who can inspect a scaffold? It shall be conducted by a competent person who has combination of knowledge, training, and experience. A competent person who is holding the relevant construction industry scaffolders qualification. Inside the guidelines, it says competent person with relevant knowledge and experience and be able to inspect and find any faults with the basic access and complex design scaffold. Signing certificates and registers, provide recommendation in accordance with industry best practice, attain an understanding of scaffolding components, forms of construction, inspection procedures of basic access scaffold to comply with relevant current legislation, and the ability to interpret design specification and statutory regulation of complex design scaffold structures for faults. Next. So the qualification requirements for basic scaffold inspector, we have two types or two stages of inspector. One is the basic scaffold inspector and the other one is complex inspector. So the first one should be basic scaffold inspector, must attain knowledge, understanding and demonstrate of the following: understand scaffold components, the maximum standard spacing, for example, the maximum lift height for every types of scaffold, basic access scaffold requirements and inspection procedures, industry best practice and scaffolding terminology, and must complete Part B training at least a minimum of 18 months site experience. And they can only inspect these types of scaffolds: independent, birdcage, towers. It doesn't matter whether it is system scaffold or conventional tubes and fitting scaffolds and protection frames. Next. Qualification of complex scaffold inspector: have a knowledge and understanding and demonstrate the following: the appropriate safety regulation, the ability to interpret design, specification and statutory regulation, because for complex scaffold structure, inspection must be done according to the design. Industry best practice and scaffold terminology, and completed advanced scaffolding training with at least a minimum of 36 months site experience. Interpret design drawings such as staircase scaffold, cantilever drop or truss out scaffold, slant scaffold, shoring scaffold, temporary building protection scaffold, which require design. Next. So what are the application of scaffold inspection? It shall be identified and requested by competent scaffolding supervisor, or it can be a construction supervisor. It can be performed by either internal or third-party scaffolding inspector. Standard inspection report form will be used in printable form and secured from unauthorized interference. The inspection report must be prepared before the end of the working period and must be shared with the client employer within 24 hours. And the report must be kept at site where the inspection was carried out for easy access. Display a scaffolding text after inspection as good practice, and record of the inspection report shall be kept at least 3 months after the scaffolding had been dismantled. Next. So what are the information included in an inspection report? It should be the name and address of the person for whom the inspection was carried out, the client, the location, the specific location of the inspection, specific description of the scaffold, not only the type of the scaffold, but the volume, how many lifts, how many bay. And then the date and time of the inspection is very important. Details of any matter identified that could give rise to a risk to the health and safety of any person. Details of any action taken as a result of any matter identified, whether it's major or minor. It depends on the inspector itself, whether he have to stop the work immediately, or if it is a minor finding, he can give maybe half a day or 1 day to rectify. Details of any further action considered necessary, and the name and position of the person making the report. Next. So thank you very much. For further inquiries, you can either go to Sheena or go to our website at megamas.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shadi, for the presentation, which among other outlines that it is key and essential for management to play an important role in ensuring scaffold activity is conducted safely. We are now aware that there are differences between basic and complex scaffolding, and those who wish to be certified as inspectors need to be aware of the requirements. For the next presenter, we would like to invite Muhammad Isam bin Haji Ibrahim, Managing Director of Best Integrated Engineer Solution and Supply Sdn Berhad, to present on rescue from height practices and arrangement.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Isam bin Haji Ibrahim. I'm the Managing Director for Best Integrated Engineer Solution and Supplies, also the assessor for the course Rope Tactic Rescue at Height and Confined Space, Advanced and also Basic, and the Facility Manager for Third-Party Rescue Standby Rescue Team. Okay, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the third year establishment of SHENA and thank SHENA for giving me the platform to go into this topic. Okay, the topic today is rescue from heights and practices and arrangement. Okay, next. Okay, without further ado, what is about falling that makes it dangerous? These are the 4 factors, not limited, but these are the 4 factors that may cause danger to the person working at height, even with fall protection equipment. Okay, first is the free fall distance. Second is the shock absorption of the impact and the body weight of the personnel. In this topic, we will be focusing on the prolonged suspension in an upright position and how to mitigate and how to ensure that the person is rescued. Okay, next. Okay, in these phases, there are 5 phases of falling from height. As you can see from phase 1, there the person connected to an anchorage with the necessary fall protection or fall preventive equipment. Okay, on the first stage, on the first phase, the fall on site from the working platform give way to free falling on the phase 2, and the deceleration of through the energy absorber elongation, and the rebound on phase 4. In phase 5, the suspension of the IP. Okay, next. Today, I will give a case study in regards to a personnel that is a personnel or a schoolboy who has died in Singapore this year, early February, where he is involved in high element activities. Next. In this report, he profoundly lost his footing with the with participating in the high element course, but was suspended by the safety harness and subsequently lost consciousness due to the lengthy time to rescue or to lower him onto the ground, and that has caused his death afterward. So what are the what can be prevented in this case? Next. So the authority of SHENA has already enacted an IGN 02/2020 guideline to work at height in the component of a prevention fall plan in 3.13 emergency response. That will be most of our topic today. Next. IGN 02/2020 stated that in the emergency response procedure, a writing emergency response plan must be established, and it should cover the procedure for handling emergency related to fall from height. You may see at IGN 06/2021 guidance for work at height rescue plan. At Appendix A, checklist work at height rescue plan. Okay, next. In an event of a fall, it may be necessary to retrieve the injured worker or the IP from the site swiftly. Therefore, the equipment to perform rescue must be readily available on site and the worker must be trained to perform rescue. It is important that the worker who is suspended in a full body harness to be rescued promptly. In some studies shows that the unconscious person or from suspension trauma can occur in 5 minutes, and that may follow shortly after a few minutes. Therefore, emergency response procedure must be put in place when work has to be performed at height or an exposure to height. Next. While developing this procedure, a few considerations, the types of emergency rescue scenario may arise. We at least the information obtained during the risk assessment to facilitate this task must be considered for the suitable rescue kit. There is number 1, distance to the ground, location of fall, and the required PPE. Rescue kit should be visibly accounted and inspected at least once a month by a competent person and are documented. Careful consideration on the type of anchor should also be noted until with a minimum of 15 kilonewtons. Next. Effective emergency response procedure may require one or more of the followings, which is the worker use of safety harness should not be working alone. This is to ensure the checking of the safety harness and to prevent any unseen safety procedure that is not applied properly. And a person that is trained in rescue technique must be allocated also at site for prompt rescue, and the rescue equipment also must be available at site for use. Thanks. Next. The emergency response procedure must also cover the provision of first aid. It is important to identify at site who are the first aider and whether or not they're competent, and the necessary first aid equipment must be acquired at site. Identify the nearest hospital or medical treatment rooms and establish a means of contact for the emergency service promptly. Next. As rescue operations are often carried out under extreme stress, we must also consider to give all aspects of rescue process element, such as the rescue method or equipment required and readiness on site, the procedure to gain access into less accessible area, the training required for rescue and first aider, and efficient and readily available means of communication. Next. Worker must also provide with the information on the rescue or the emergency plan, including who to approach during an event of an emergency or call, the procedure to be followed for emergency, including those for personnel, for the personnel who are unsuspended in safety harness during fall arrest. Okay, it is also recommended that all workers who are involved in working at height must be trained in self-rescue or self-relief technique, such as the use of suspension trauma strap be provided for worker using safety harnesses. Next. Okay, what is the cause after a fall? Orthostatic intolerance is the medical terms for the body inability to cope for prolonged period of immobility in a vertical position, which is hanging motionlessly, is a very efficient way to induce orthostatic. Okay, in other terms, they call it suspension trauma, but trauma is not a correct term, but it's not less lethal. It is also known in other sector of the country or beyond, harness hang syndrome. Next. Suspension trauma or orthostatic intolerance is life-threatening, or whatever harness that is provided to the worker working at height, motionless suspension is not physiologically safe and will eventually lead to serious blood circulation problem that may conclude to death. Next. So what is suspension trauma? it is or harness-induced pathology. The medical effect of immobilization in a vertical position as a result of suspension in a harness. The official term is orthostatic intolerance, concerning with the death of relatively uninjured casualty with a suspended have suspended in a harness. Okay, this may result in unconsciousness followed by death in less than 30 minutes. Next. Suspension trauma can result to as long as the legs are immobile and lower than the heart rate. The reason for blood fail to get to the brain is due to the immobilization of the person's limb, movement of the muscle in the arms and the legs to help blood to back up in the vein. Research indicate that the type and fit of harness is essentially irrelevant to the development of suspension trauma. Next. So these are the rapid cascade of events during a suspension trauma. Where in 3 to 6 minutes, the venous pulling begins unless the legs are moving. In 6 to 12 minutes, the obstruction of veins worsen due to the harness cramp on the vertebral veins, abdominal pressure from harness, or position pressure on inferior vein cava. Okay, loss of consciousness may cause the person to lose consciousness, loss of protective airway, such as the tongue, blockage of the air, loss of ability to control the neck, and then loss of ability to control the upper body, and last but not least, loss of further blood flow to the brain that may cause to death. Next. So these are the few myths. We'll just go through 2 of the 5th urban myth that I have here. One is that it caused by the tight leg loops. Incorrect. This is incorrect. There is no need for the harness to become constructive, and study used subject leaning against a wooden board without any harness at all, shown just as rapid symptom. Published cases of faint and death for vertical stretcher halts, parachute harness, helicopter stroke, all shown that the leg construction may help, but it is not required, definitely. Next. I can prevent it by keeping fit and moving my leg. This is incorrect. Fitness has no bearing, and in one study, highly trained endurance athlete actually show more risk of early symptoms. In a full body harness with nothing to kick against, most people cannot move their leg strenuously for more than 5 minutes. It is true the leg movement will buy you time, but usually not enough. Okay, next. Okay, this is also one of the urban myths. Okay, front attachment isn't allowed in the EU. No, front attachment is allowed, and as long as it is above the center of gravity. But in the US, front attachment is illegal. The international ISO standard also permits both type. Next. Okay, next. Since we don't have much time. Okay, next. All right, so OSHA states that the potential fatal suspension trauma can occur within minutes while waiting for rescue after fall. An average fall rescue time is usually 15 minutes. Okay, so this is a person who has a fall arrest by harness, and the blood pools in the legs. These are the stages. Brain raised pulse rate and respiratory to compensate. Okay, and then towards the end will be brain damage and eventually death. Next. Meeting compliances. Okay, so for the fall protection system criteria and practices, OSHA require that employer provide for prompt rescue of employee in the event of a fall, or shall assure that employees are able to rescue themselves. Okay. This should include identify rescue procedure that address the potential for orthostatic intolerance and suspension trauma. Rescue procedure also should address how the rescuer work will be handled to avoid any post-rescue injury or a secondary injury. Next. So what happened during a body malfunction after a fall arrest. The brain oxygen are deprived that may lead to fainting and eventually death. Heart rate and blood return to the heart. Oxygen supply to the brain and other vital organs reduce. Meanwhile, the legs, femoral veins are compressed by harnesses, leg strap, skeletal muscle pumps in, legs are less active and completely inactive. This caused the blood to pool in the victim's leg. Okay, next. Okay, so how to prevent this is that in order to provide when use of relief step, when use of relief step, okay, it's a device when used provides support and enhance blood circulation until rescue, permitting the ability to move and flex muscle. Okay, so next. Okay, this is how it looks like before attach and how to attach the relief step. Next. Okay, so to overcome orthostatic intolerance, the victim may self-rescue using where they provide a rescue ladder for relief step and for self-rescue. Okay, so this is how the rescue ladder looks like. Next. Overcoming orthostatic intolerance using when victim is on suspension, relief step is provided or adjustable loop, foot loop for relief step. So you can see if the person is on suspension, they can actually step on the loop so to ensure that the blood flow continues uninterrupted. Next. So this is also, this is what I meant. They can step on the relief step to ensure the blood flow. Next. Overcoming orthostatic intolerance, use of nearby structure for relief step. If any of these are not provided, they can use the near structure to ensure that the blood flow continues without interruption. Next. Non-contact rescue can also be implemented using a rescue pole. As you can see there, it's a pole connected to a line where they can use this line to bring down the victim. Next. Contact rescue, either it is using harnesses, stroke, which is a way to bring the victim up or down to safety, okay, using this system. Next. Either whatever methodology is used, the target time should be rescued the suspend employees is under 5 minutes. Next. After rescue, they should perform a recovery position, either sitting up or lying down. This is because we need to support and keep the victim in a sit-up position with the legs slightly bent, keep the airway open. Immobile suspension for more than 10 minutes would be dangerous occurrence and may transfer to hospital for eventually of renal function and others. Thank you. That's all. Next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Isam, for the brief presentation on suspension trauma and its effect. The presentation highlights why it is important that every company or organization that has its workers involved in work at heights activities needs to have a proper emergency response plan. Without further ado, we may now invite Daniel Eng, ASEAN representative of PASMA, to share a presentation on mobile tower safety and practices.
Okay, mic check. Good morning. just want to share.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah, good. All right. Good morning to everybody. I'm going to speak a little bit more about tower safety in Brunei and how we can advance safety towards the goal that you set in Brunei. So coming from PASMA, next slide, please. PASMA is an organization involved with prefabricated access for manufacturer and also for practitioners around the world. So PASMA is an organization that knows about mobile towers and cares about the people who use them. We have a series of memberships around the world, and please send the next slide, please. Sorry, one slide before that, too fast. Too fast, yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, we are the organization that is a non-profit organization for the last more than 40 years, based in UK originally. And this is about putting ahead of interest for people who are working at height, primarily those who deal with tower access and mobile access. This may be made of aluminum, or in some cases, material made of GRP as well as steel. So mobile tower has been used throughout the world, and we are going to share with you what do we do to support the industry. We provide technical guidance to user as well as the one who install it, and we manage training scheme for those who want to be competent and be recognized as a competent person. And we provide worldwide promotion of towers, and we work with organizations like SHENA to promote the safety and use of tower access. Next, please. So what is the standard that we use for towers? We are primarily talking about a tower that meets the EN 1004 standard. There's more and more across the world, including UK and Europe, to name a few, Singapore, Malaysia, as well as Oman, Qatar, South Africa, and UAE have started to use this standard of EN 1004. And I'm sure you will know that EN 1004, it is a standard that we choose to comply from manufacturer stage until it is used on the ground. So across the membership with PASMA actually certified manufacturer down to the user. So it does give a very broad spectrum of complying to all the safety standard that is in place, the latest standard. For instance, Malaysia, when they started MY 1462, KVMRT has started to introduce EN 1004 by implementing a mandatory requirement for all projects that they handle to insist that work at height will have to start with this one-day course that comply to PASMA standard. This is an industrial-led option. I'm sure it can be an option for Brunei or anywhere else, including this region that I'm promoting, which has nothing below the standard of the international norm. So we wanted to make sure that places like Oman and Qatar, who has also their own similar association like Sheena, such as Hsc PDO in Oman, and South Africa, they have adopted this SANS, similar to 1004 standard, which is the S1004. Next slide, please. So why would you want to provide a tower access when you have to work at height? I think this is the option after the work at height assessor has started to implement towers. After all the option is considered not available or not suitable, you use a tower. So the tower should have a lightweight solution, and it has to provide a safe work at height, ideally to provide only a temporary working platform. So because it is a modular system and is manufactured from material that are compliant to this standard, it guarantees that material are built to standard and also the quality. So PASMA, with the partnership of HSE, the Health Safety Executive, do define two options of making this as assembly safe, which is considered two types. One is the 3T method, and another one is AGR, short for Advanced Guardrail method, which is a system. I will go into that a little bit in the detail. So PASMA also provide training that instruct delegates on the correct application of both options. Mobile access tower can be used in multiple configuration, and you know, simple tower can become operationally difficult when you work on, for instance, on the staircase or on a cantilever platform. So some of this training are adopted in the PASMA courses. The standard mobile access is simple to assemble. It takes less than 5 minutes for some of them who are trained. And those without any use of special tools, I want to make it clear. And also, if you are using the 3T method, you should not be using a PPE like a body harness when installing these kind of towers. Next, please. So the safety statistic that I'm going to share in workplace safety and health report from the Singapore, recently published up to year 2020. And you can see that from the chart, the accident rate has dropped over the years because the national target for this was to achieve at 1 per 100,000 workers. To achieve that, they have taken a long way and is still on the target to achieving this. Last 2 years, we have been under the pandemic. Unfortunately, during this pandemic year, 2021, accident have exceeded the accident rate that is happening in 2020. So unfortunately, we are not there yet for the Singapore standard. Because I'm based in Singapore, I will share with you these statistics. Next slide, please. So, sorry, before that, the next one before. Yeah, okay. These statistics, the next chart I want to highlight is the importance of accident, the cause of accident. If you see the top of the cause is fall from height, which happen to be the number of always stay on the top of the incident. This is fatality. I'm referring to fatality that is caused by work at height. And the next one is the vehicle incident, which is transporting worker out of the site or to the site, which is the remaining to be the second. And the third most common incident is slip, trips, and falls. So we are talking about this is to give you an idea that work at height remain a very high risk work scope. So please take precaution and take preventive measure. I will share with you the next slide, which is a video to show you how accident has happened and also what we can do to prevent these accidents. Next slide, please. Next slide is a video. Can you click? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Please play the video one more time. Okay, I think you can see that actually this is caught on the video on the actual site when people are moving a tower, and they are all doing all the wrong things, as you can see. For bad practice will lead to an accident. It looks like a process plant, and there are workers pushing a mobile tower with 2 men sitting on the handrail. This is not supposed to be done like that, and nobody should be in the platform when they are moving this tower. So next, please. I have another slide presentation on the video. You click the video, please. And you can click the other video as well and let it play. Yeah, this is an on-the-spot video. It's taken by an amateur. It's not actually taken for this presentation, but I've used this to illustrate what has happened in a very large job, had met an accident. What are the things that could have happened? You can see that a rescue operation, my earlier guest speaker has mentioned about rescue. You can click the next video, which shows the tower. Yeah, that's right. Just let the video play, and you can see that the video is showing a rescue operation with the fire department using the mobile tower. So happened the mobile tower was actually nearby, and it can be built, as I said, in 5 minutes or less. If you can build a height of this in 5 minutes, you can do a rescue. At the same time, you can see the scaffold built of aluminum tower at that height in a shopping mall has collapsed, and you can see that the accident is a large-scale accident. So this can happen with many reasons. One of the reasons that I can cite for this case, it was built in an indoor, and you don't expect wind to come in. But for this building, it was an open with a lot of air coming from the side of the shopping mall, and the gust of the wind has came in unplanned. So there are incidents that caused this to collapse. So next slides, I will go through some of the poor practices that we can share before I go into the correct example. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, I have to go quickly because I have another 5 minutes. So bad practices have now gone to many areas, from airport to hospital. You can see towers are being used. You can see people are standing in a very unsafe manner. People are using the wrong method of installing it. Even if he has a harness, he's not going to fall, prevent his fall, because it's got nothing to hook on. Next slide, please. Yeah, the next slide shows the, you can see that the buildings are not local. I have shared with you some Asian site as well as foreign site. Still, a lot of bad practices are able to be found with proper supervision. If the supervisor is not trained, he's unlikely to spot the mistake that his worker is doing. Next slide, please. I can show you this one. It's a very clear example of what it is now. On the right-hand side, it's still being practiced, with a very bare standard of a scaffold, a temporary access. It's really temporary. It's not supposed to go even use it. The second on the left, which is the green tag, is a proper aluminum towers for a bridge pier to be built for finishing work here. So I think it's a lot safer if you can use that one. The next slide, please. So I'm going to share with you how you can make the mobile tower as safer. Next slide. I've shared earlier on preventing fall and how do you do without having to need to wear a harness when you're installing this. As you can see, the slides here is made of an animation. We have the training provided to people who are to be competent. They will sit on the board and the female worker can install this with a safe position by showing you the next slide. He installed the handrails before he get up to stand on the platform. So he's not allowed to stand on the platform till he install the handrails. Next slide, please. This is the 3T method, which is a through the thread methods. The advantages of this method is they are located with one operator in a protected position. You can see that he can use this easily, and we can make it slightly more versatile in certain configuration and also many power configurations. So the other few more slides will show the system that the equipment is in place. If you use an advanced guardrail, a person would be able to go to the next level, pre-assemble with the system with a handrail in place. So this will give the user a free protection on top of the, before he get up to the position of working the next level. The next slide, please. So the handrails are all in place and he's in the right position to get up to the working platform. This will allow worker to work safely at this level. Next slide. What to check before you actually do this job? I'm sure we discussed earlier about the risk assessment. We got to speak about ground condition, the use of stabilizer, inspecting component before you start to use, and make sure the training and competency of the worker are in place. So next slide, please. PASMA is able to provide a lot of information online. You can apply to add into your apps to get all this information available online on your apps, that you can get information out of what is a safe guideline for towers and working in different conditions. I'm pleased to say we are already having members in Brunei who are conducting training for towers in Brunei, and I was told the next batch will be training in the second and third week of December. It is done by our member known as Best Integrated. So we will share with you more if you can give me your contact or anyone who are interested to know a little bit more about tower access. Next slide will show you the apps that you can apply and stay up to date. This is the end of my presentation. Please do drop me a line or give. There's an end of the slide with my email address. You can see. Write to us. This is our UK address. You can get to me through Sheena. We will work with Sheena on improving the culture going ahead in the next few years. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel, for sharing information on the safer practices of assembling of mobile towers. With that, we now move on to the question and answer session. Please state your name and organization followed by your question. And you may ask a live question by clicking the hand raise button on top right panel. You are allowed to turn on your camera and mic. I will now pass on to Mr. Christopher Ng, Acting Head of the Legal Division, SHENA, to coordinate the question and answer session.
Thank you, Azima, and welcome back to the question. Let's get down to it. I saw a hand raise just now. I don't see it anymore, but let me deal with one of the questions that was asked from Maybe the question is anti-slip part of the for scaffolding boards, especially outdoor scaffolding? I think this was asked during Mr. Clive's presentation as a feedback. Mr. Clive, are you there to be able to answer this?
Okay, anti-slip, that is good. That is additional controls. But for the standard, it does not state really that you need to have it. But that is a best practice if you apply anti-slip.
Thank you very much for your clarification. We understand that anti-slip is a best practice. I think we also have a question directed to Mr. Shahdi of Megamas. The specific question being, is it correct that scaffolding boards can be reused if they show slight damage and once they are deemed reusable? Mr. Shahdi, are you there and able to answer this? Thank you.
Scaffold materials should be inspected before use. If you find any defects on the scaffolding boards, whether it's a painted board, there's a warp or crack, it must be removed from site. It depends on the condition of the scaffolding board. It can be reused. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shahdi, for the clarification that what's important here is that before any scaffolding operation, we do have to take the proper precautions such as inspection before moving forward. And if the inspection deems it's reusable, I believe it's understood it can. I think we also have a question with regards to the presentation from Muhammad Isam. I think the question is, who can be deemed competent and trained to perform rescue at heights? Mr. Isam, would you like to take this one?
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Thank you for the question. The term personnel is competent to perform rescue is very it's depending on the standard of the country, I believe. And then for our side, we follow by the NFPA guidance. Okay. From NFPA, we have awareness level, we have basic level, and we have advanced level that we also conduct the training. For us, the person who are deemed suitable or competent to rescue as a minimum basic level rescue as per NFPA. That's my answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Isam. And I think we also have, I just have a question based on general observation of Mr. Daniel's presentation. You mentioned, Mr. Daniel, that there is membership of PASMA and that you have a app as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yes, good. This is an app about, okay, am I on the mic? Yeah, okay. This is the app
we can hear you,
that
Daniel,
is available on the Apple phone or Android phone. You can download this app to check who is a qualified training center that PASMA recognized. And also you can check who are the manufacturers that have complied with 1004 standard. And at the same time, if you want to check the competency of the worker who have gone through the course, whether their pass is still valid, you can also do that check. At the same time, the apps also allow you to toggle with the latest standard that are being in place and what are the new standard, and explaining the detail of how the standard work and affect the work coming up for you. So there are a lot of information, flyers, as well as safety fact sheets that we have for inspecting towers. What are the steps to do to inspect the towers, and how to be a qualified and competent inspector, as well as an installer, and also beneficial for user to be using these apps quite a very simple app to download, just like any apps that you have in a handphone. So in order to be a member, you get more access for safety practitioner. You can get a lot of information more professionally in terms of investigation, report, things like that are also shared in the members forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. It's always good to see how we can leverage the use of technology in order to better our safety practices. And for those of you who are interested in actually finding out more about PASMA, you have an open to Mr. Daniel to contact him, or you can download the app, which is available on the App Store as well as Google Play, in order to find out further information. We have two hand raised here, so we'll deal with them one by one. So maybe Mr. Hasif, you can go forward first with your question. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Hi, Hasif here from Brunei Legislation. I guess my question is on the use of site netting on scaffolding. Is it a common practice for Scaffolder to install site netting? And are they trained to use or install the site netting at the scaffold?
I believe the question is to do with the use of scaffolding site netting. Does anyone want to? Mr. Hasif, do you have any more question?
No, that's it.
So the general question is about the use of scaffolding site netting and perhaps some guidance concerning this matter. Perhaps Mr. Clive, do you have any views on this?
Actually, it's not on the training, but if you say netting, I believe the scaffolding is already fully erected when we install netting, right? That the scaffolding is already safe to use. But when you say if we are trained on doing it, actually it's not the part of our training.
Mr. Shah, sorry, Jamie, do you have something to say as well?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think what the question relates to the use of netting, and I think the netting is there to prevent dropped objects and to protect the public. So the understanding there is there are different reasons for nets being installed. Workplaces have the practices of dropping things from the top in chutes. Again, that's a good practice if it's controlled to drop objects using safety chutes. But the netting is primarily there to protect passerbys and prevent dropped objects harming people or harming the public in general. Is it a common practice in the country? Yes, it is slowly becoming common practice as Sheena does more and more inspections and monitoring visits. We are tending to see more places using the netting. But is it common practice? I would say not yet. Thank you.
We have a question on the chat, which is what is the proper standard for the scaffolding end user to use a safety harness during working on completed scaffolding with a green tag? Does anyone want to take this one? Yes, Jamie.
Okay, so again, this is a question that will be from the regulator's point of view. If the scaffolding is deemed to be safe and you have provided guardrails and a proper platform, then that scaffolding area is seen to be safe. And I think all the scaffolding practitioners in the audience will agree on that. So the need for a safety harness is not required. However, when the individual is en route to the platform, if he is in any way exposed, risk assessment needs to be undertaken to ensure his safety. In that situation, he may need a safety harness to support his access to the safe platform. So it is down to the occupier and the supervisor to ensure the safety of the worker at the end of the day. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more final question from Raihan. Raihan, can you please proceed with your question before we move on to the next stage? Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Good morning. Raihan here from BSP HSC department. Thank you for giving the opportunity, and I do understand that we are more focused on the safety aspect while working at height, but I do believe we should not neglect on health condition as well. So I've made some reference to OSHA fact sheet September 2005, working outdoors in warm climates, especially in Brunei Legislation, workers are exposing to heat, UV radiation from the sun, and with the upcoming monsoon season by the end of the year. To be honest, I have no questions, but just a thought on general health condition on scaffolders and those working at high personnel as a prerequisite prior training or prior actual work. And I believe one of the root causes leading to the incident could be heat stress, dehydration, lack of concentration, and pre-existing medical condition by the likes of history of having BPs, high BPs, broken arms. Probably just my recommendation to have health prerequisite in place for all working at height related. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raihan. I believe Sheena has actually issued as well a recent workplace safety notice on heat stress, which is available on our Sheena website for further perusal, and general guidance to all employers and principals, as well as occupiers, to ensure that heat stress does not become something that affects workers in their line of work. But thank you very much for your contribution. I believe we have run out of time for the answer session for today. We would advise you that if you still have any more further questions to ask, that to please place it in the chat box, where our Sheena Inspectorate team will actually check this and actually respond to you later on. So we'd like to thank all the speakers today for your very insightful presentations. And most importantly, we'd like to thank all the audience today for the very interesting questions that you have generated to the speakers. I'll now pass this on to Azima, and I'd like to thank all of you for your participation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you who shared their questions, and thank you to the speakers as well for the clarifications. Questions, again, as a reminder, questions that have not been addressed in today's session shall be addressed via Sheena's website, www.sheena.gov.bn, after the event. You can also send in your queries to info@sheena.gov.bn. May we invite our Chief Captain Jamie Rebello, Chief Inspector of Industry, to conclude presentation after this we will have Kahoot quiz.
Thank you very much, Azima. So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, having come to the end of this most interesting forum, it is my honor to thank you for your active participation and involvement. Today, we have had the opportunity to listen to some excellent guidance and information to help not only raise awareness, but provide each one of us a suitable way forward within our organizations in safely controlling and managing work at height activities and preventing injuries as well as fatalities. It is with your support and efforts that we can make a difference and ensure our colleagues within the workplace undertake their roles safely and with due regard to the health and safety of everyone around. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizing committee for this event, for a sterling job, and for the long hours in materializing the event as well, which has been a resounding success. By joining this event, you now become the champions for safety, and I would like to request your support to spread the message that by raising awareness about the right ways of working safely, we can deliver on the aspirations of the nation through the Wawasan 2035 objective of quality of life. I wish you a safe day ahead, and remember that you can make a difference and help us ensure Brunei is a safe place to work and live. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Jamie, for this speech. Next slide. To all participants, please be informed to fill in the post-event survey, which will be shown on the slides. Yes, or by clicking on the link provided in the chat box. Shared. To continue with our last agenda for today, for our audience to join our Kahoot quiz, Sheena has prepared a few questions based on today's presentation. Please scan the next QR code that will be shared on the screen. Next slide. Yes, thank you. Please scan the QR code to join the game, or you can directly Google Kahoot, insert the game pin, and select play. Please be informed that the game is limited to 50 participants only. We now pass the floor to our game master, Arisa.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon all. Before I begin, can I test if you all can hear my voice?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I will share my screen in a second. If you can scan the QR code to join the Kahoot, I will share in a minute. If you are unable to scan or detect the QR code, don't worry. You can check on the chat box. You can just search kahoot.it, kahoot.it. In the screen, the game pin is 7529035. As mentioned by Nur Azima before, the game is only for 50 participants only. Please to use your name and also your organization. We will automatically start once we reach the 50 participants. Okay, one more. Okay, we will begin in a minute. Before I start, just to share with you guys, top 3 winners will get prizes from Sheena. Okay, I will start the game. So the questions are from today's presentation. So what does Sheena stands for? The answers are also mentioned in our early presentation as a hint. All right. Sorry, hold on ya. Okay. Next question, what does WHO 2019 stands for?
This is a bit tricky. All right. Okay. We have AR leading for the scoreboard. Next question, legal requirements are in place for worker with a risk of falling more than. The answer is 2 meters. Next question. AR still leading. Next question. What are among the typical concerns observed for scaffolding in Brunei? Okay, let's see. AR still leading. What is the limit height for a basic scaffold? Answer is 15 meters. Let's see. We have Hilmi leading. Number 6, what is the recommended practice for getting onto a scaffold? The answer is ladder. We have Chris leading. Next question. Who can conduct a scaffold inspection? One more answer. Okay. Next question. We have Chris still leading. Last 2 questions. Which of these are example of scaffold which require scaffold inspection? Okay, number 9, which of the following documents should prepare for working at height? Last question, which is not an advantage of using mobile access towers? We have Natch number 3, Azmi BSP number 2. We have Chris number 1. I will contact you personally for the gift. For the winners, can you use the hand raise tool so I can text you personally? So I can ask for your details.
All right, thank you, Arisa. Next slide. Yes. To all participants, we would like to have everyone to fill in the post-event survey by scanning the QR code shown on the slide. The link is also provided in the chat box. Next slide, please. If you wish to download today's slides, you may scan the QR code shown on the slide. Today's slides can also be found on our webpage at www.sheena.gov.bn. Next slide. With that, Alhamdulillah, we have come to the end of working at Height Forum as part of the Safety, Health and Environment National Authorities Safety Forum. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to express our deepest appreciation to those in attendance and sincere apologies should there be any shortcomings throughout today's event. We hope today's event has been beneficial to all participants in increasing your knowledge on safety issues pertaining to work at heights. And Sheena looks forward to working closely with you to improve HSE awareness and management within your organization. Let us all adhere to the SOP set by the Ministry of Health in controlling the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe, and have a great day. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you. Goodbye.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Well done, Sheena. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Jamie. That was great forum. I think we all learned so much from this session.
Appreciate your support.
Yeah, I put something in a post-event survey. I didn't want to bring it up during the event just now, but it's around imposing fines, Jamie. You know, imposing fines for companies where we have fatalities, because we're moving away from TRC and moving into SIF. But I think with fines on companies, and then I was thinking of putting a factor in whereby the number of WHSO officers and coordinators that will be reduced by that factor. That will sort of encourage companies to get their guys enrolled, Because
Correct.
the more officers and coordinators we have in an organization, that will really help, right? I mean, invariably, people become more awareness, but it's quite disturbing, huh? I mean, the number of fatalities we had since 2013, and I would imagine in the construction